Good morning, good morning, good morning. Let me pull these critters off. Hope everybody is having a good morning this morning. I know that the volume was a little bit low yesterday, so we're going to make sure that it is plenty loud enough today before we get started. We're going to wait just a minute for those who would get on live and make sure that we are having good audio. Let's see. Looks like we've got good audio. And I'm going to share this this morning with someone that I just got off a coaching call with. If you don't know, you can book coaching calls. They can be code. They can be code coaching calls. They can be small business coaching calls. They can be whatever you want to talk about. I will say this, that I don't talk about electrical exam prep with you until you've gone through the full pro version. Doesn't matter how much you pay me, I'm not interested, because the reason that we've made the pro version is so we don't have to repeat the same things over and over. If you do, however, go through everything on the pro version and want to do a coaching session, of course, I'm here for you 100%. I'm always here for free one-off coaching when it comes to electrical exam prep while you're taking the pro version, and also just one-off coaching for small business, business ethics, how to start your business, different things like that. You can head over to electricalcodecoach.com and you can click on that booking link, or it's called one-on-one coaching, and you can book a time. Just got off a coaching call just a moment ago. Let's go ahead and get started today. Hey everyone, welcome back. I am the Electrical Code Coach, and this is the Alpha Phase Podcast, and our goal is to be the number one in adding value to you. Let's get to it. Let's take a look today at today in electrical history. This one blew me away, y'all. On October 23rd, 1916, the master station clocked that helped synchronize the grid. So just to give you a quick snapshot of what's going on here. At this point in the system, there are physical people at the generation stations adjusting the generator's output to try to match that 60 hertz. If it starts slowing more, they'll let more water in or more coal or whatever to get the hertz back to 60. If there are too many hertz, they'll actually back the generation off in order to get that generator to stay at the 60 cycles. So they're physically doing it. A person's job was to do this. And I'm sure it was a team of people, but I just wanted to kind of set the stage. Now let's take a look at it. October 23rd, 1916 marks a quiet but monumental moment in electrical power history. On that day, engineer Henry E. Warren installed what was called a master station clock at the L Street Generation Station at the Edison Electric Illuminating Company in Boston. Now you say, wait a second, wasn't Edison D.C.? He was, but I think it was around 1914, it was settled that AC1, he gets booted out of his own company by J.P. Morgan. And of course, you know, he works on other things and ends up making these amazing inventions. But here they are now full swing AC. And I'm sure they kept the DC system for a period in New York because it was already fully functioning. This wasn't just a clock to tell time. So here we have this man and he installs this clock. It used a self-starting synchronous motor tied to the plant's alternating current output, comparing the motor's motion with a precision pendulum. So at this point in society, for 300 or more years, they had precision clocks that were beautiful mechanical clocks that kept perfect time. Tick, 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 tick. So let me explain this first, and then we'll go on to how the other grids adopted it. Let's take a look at this now. Let's talk about Warren's clock. Warren's clock, the Type A version, typically featured a central comparison dial with two superimposed hands. So I want you to imagine two second hands on this clock. The master hand, which was the mechanical version, the one that kept perfect time, this hand was often black and was driven by the clock's high precision. Mechanical movement regulated by the pendulum. So this is just a normal functioning master clock that you can rely on. This represented the absolutely correct time and the reference standard. What this man did is he added a second connection to it, a second hand right underneath it, or I don't know exactly the configuration, But the generated time hand, this hand was often gold, and it was driven by the synchronous motor connected directly to the power plant's alternating current output. Since the synchronous motor speed was locked to the AC frequency of the generator, this hand's movement represented the total number of cycles or that were accumulated by the generator's output. How it worked. Synchronization. The generator was running at a perfect average of 60 cycles per second when the gold hand and the black hand moved in perfect unison. So they knew the generator was putting out a perfect 60 hertz when it ran in exact unison with that black hand. The remaining superimposed hand over each other, they moved together. Here's the correction and the amazing part. Because they were winging it up to this point, right? Probably going off of sound, and maybe they had some light bulbs in the room, or they had some other ways to maybe detect what this generator was outputting. If the gold hand fell behind the hand, it meant that the generator's frequency was running slightly lower, fewer than 60 cycles per second. The plant operator would manually increase the speed of the generator's turbine by adjusting the steam or water or pouring on the coal, right, whatever it was, to boost the frequency slightly above 60 to get it balanced out. The gold hand would then run slightly faster to the black until it caught up, and it was superimposed again, and they were clicking in step, ensuring the accumulated total cycles were correct. Let me explain the significance of this. This, to me, blew me away. So he's got these clocks. One of them is hard set on the exact time. The other one is going with the tick of the generator based off of its turns to keep that 60 hertz output, and then going out in the world to do work, first at very high voltages, and then obviously being stepped down and doing what we know that it does. Until this point, each generation station could not be interconnected because they had no way to keep everyone's 60 hertz at the same time. If they're not in phase and frequency, it will not work. It would buck, right? And it would not work, and likely what we do in the electrical industry called blow up. But the moment that you synchronize two different generators or a solar system, think about your solar in-phase connectors. I love this stuff. So you got solar on top of the building. You've got a computer down below, or a technology down below that matches, and then you hook the shore power right to it. It matches the phase and the frequency, so those two don't just explode. And it's literally like hooking a second water pipe to the first water pipe, which was the utility, and having more electrons, or the ability to use electrons from both sources, into one converging pipe. Well, that's what this technology allowed for multiple grids. So once we got this down, and let me switch back over here, and I will read this last little bit, and then we'll kind of tie everything together. Let's go right here. As more plants adopted the clocks, utilities could share electricity, enabling the interconnected power grids instead of isolated plants. So on this day, the foundational matter of grid frequency regulation, something we largely take for granted today, got a major boost. So what they would do is they would hook these clocks up, and then the neighboring generation station would also hook the clock up. And they would have these clocks, and they would have someone manually pouring on the coal or backing off, or the water or whatever. It would allow these generators to be at the same frequency at the same time, which allowed for grid interconnection, which made it more stable and more reliable. Now, this technology went on for a long time. I got estimates as late as the 60s and 70s, but then now we have things that can match the exact frequency, the exact angle, the exact phase, and it's all done computerized, right? But this was the only way that they had to keep everything in phase. And y'all, this blew me away. I thought this was really cool, and that is one of our pieces of this day in history. Now let's take a look at the second piece. We have two birthdays of notable people in the electrical industry. I'm going to have to raise this up. There we go. All right, we have William D. Coolidge. First, we have him. Born on October 23rd, William David Coolidge made a major contribution to the electrical engineering, most notably the development of the ductile tungsten for incandescent lamp filaments. and his leadership at General Electric Research Laboratories in advancing X-ray technology. So here we have somebody that was born that got to work on X-ray technology and also on the workable lamp filaments there at General Electric, who we found out yesterday, or maybe it was the day before, invented the light bulb. I believe that's the only two that I've got for today. There was another one who was a woman engineer who was one of the pioneers in electrical industry when in developing some other electrical technologies. I love this segment of Today in History. It gives us a deeper dive into our rich electrical history. Let's get to it. Now let's go ahead and take a look at Tool Corner. And once again, Racketeer Tools has blown me away. This thing is a beast. This thing's called the Stingray. And I want to encourage you, if you have thought of an electrical invention, you can go over to racketeers.com and they have a section where you can click on it, show them your invention, and they will help you get that thing off the ground and bring it to the masses, which I thought was pretty cool. The one that we're looking at today is called the Stingray. And y'all, they're showing data here, but I don't know why you couldn't use a piece of MC there, right? Pulling MC through. Usually we're not going to be pulling NM cable into a drop ceiling, although in 1 and 2 family dwelling units, we may be able to. But to me, y'all, this was a pretty cool invention. If you head over to racketeers.com, you can pick them up for $22. But don't just head right over there. Head into the link in the description of this video. You can save 10% on everything at racketeers.com by using the coupon code COACH10. Just be sure to use the coupon code, the link down in the description below. But this tool here will save time, money, aggravation. How many times if you had to get off the ladder because the MC's caught on the ceiling, and you get off the ladder and you go up the ladder and you feed it to yourself because the boss has you working alone, then you get back down and you go up the ladder. How much more wire could you pull in a day if you weren't constantly stopping and adjusting and going up and down the ladders? It could cut your ladder time in half. Head over to racketeers.com using the link in the description below and check it out. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the code question of the day. Welcome back. I am the Electrical Code Coach from electricalexamcoach.com, and this is the electrical question of the day. Let's get to it. NM cables 10-3 or larger can be stapled directly to the bottom of floor joists in unfinished basements. The options were A, yes, B, never, must be bored holes, C, must be 8-3 or larger, D, must be 12-2 or larger. And the correct answer is C. They must be 8-3 or larger. And there's another one that's allowed as well. According to 334.15c, only 2 6AWG, so 6-2, or 3 8AWG, like 8-3, or larger are allowed to be secured directly to the underside of joists in unfinished basements. Let's take a look at the full code language, and then I'll explain exactly what we're talking about. This is the paraphrase code language. In unfinished basements or crawl spaces, if cables are run at angles with the floor joists, it's acceptable to fasten cables only if they're either 2 6AWG or 3 8WG conductors directly to the underside of the joist. Any smaller cables must either pass through bored holes in the joist or be mounted on running boards. What this is talking about here is that if we are installing cables in an unfinished basement or a crawl space and there are the floor joists running, we are allowed to staple directly to the bottom of the joist cables that are 6'2" or larger or 8'3" or larger directly to the bottom of the joist. This would include larger cables, but it also includes 6'2", 6'3", 8'3", but it does not include 8'2". That would be required to be bored or have running boards. Let's take a look at the rest of this code language and see if we can learn something else. If non-metallic sheath cable installed in an unfinished basement wall, so if NM cable is installed along an unfinished basement wall, so we're in an unfinished basement and it's on the wall, it must either be inside of a listed conduit or tubing or be protected per 300.4. So if we are running NM cable, Romex, and we're in an unfinished basement and we're wanting to run it along the wall. So that means when I come out of that unfinished ceiling, and I drop down, or if I'm just wanting to run NM cable along the wall, it's got to be in a conduit or tubing. Let's take a look at some of the requirements if you decide to go that route. The conduit or tubing must include a bushing or adapter to prevent abrasion where the cable enters or exits. The cable sheath must extend at least a 1/4 inch into the box, and the cable must be secured within 12 inches of its point of entry to the conduit or tubing. Let me break it down very simply. What it's saying is that if you do decide to utilize this code and run NM cable along a wall in an unfinished basement or coming down the wall, however you want to look at it, you have to, when you enter into that conduit or tubing, you have to use an adapter or a bushing to help with abrasion. Within 1 foot of it entering that conduit, up top for this example, if you're going up into the ceiling, when it comes down into the wall part, when you exit the ceiling area and you come down onto the wall, has to be protected, has to be in a conduit or tubing. You're going to put an adapter or a bushing up top to help with abrasion. Within 1 foot of that connection there, of it dropping into the conduit or tubing, you have to staple it. And then when you fish it down into the box, let's imagine that you're doing a surface mount 4-square box, at least a 1/4 inch of the jacket has to come inside of the box itself. That's going to let the inspector know that you didn't pull it out, and also just let them know it's there. And it'll quickly let them know if it's 10 gauge, 12 gauge, 14 gauge wire by the color of the insulation in a lot of installations. I am the electrical code coach, and I'm really excited about today's sponsor. The sponsor of today's video is StackMax. How many times have you ever dealt with reels of wire like this? They're broken. All right, now let's take a look at the small business coaching corner. So yesterday we talked about when to hire. Now let's talk about how to hire. Now listen, if you don't own your own small business, you probably want to, or you're going to one day. So I want to take this time each day to give you the mindset, the skills, and abilities that you need in order to GSD, get stuff done. And today we're going to talk about how to hire. How do you physically hire someone? It can seem like one of the most challenging things, one of the most daunting tasks. First, you've got to ask yourself, who do I need to hire? Who am I looking for? Is this a helper? Is this intermediate? Do they have some skills? Am I looking for a rock star? Am I looking for an ultra high performer? You're not just sending it out, need help. You want to hire specifically what you're looking for, and that will save you a lot of time. You only have so much bandwidth. You only have so much compute. You can't just be interviewing every person that walks in, giving a broad net, unless you could just use anybody, and you're willing to do that. Nothing wrong with that. But let's get specific about who we want to hire. Let's imagine that we want to hire a good mid-skilled person, someone who can wire switches and receptacles and maybe install breakers, maybe change a panel by themselves. First, we're going to set out and we're going to look at how much we can afford to hire and how much the market is giving right now. If you've got some friends, you can usually call around, say, hey man, what are you paying your median people? And you can usually get a pretty good answer. So you set out and you make sure that you can afford that. Yes, you need the person. Yes, I know you're drowning in work. You've got all these things. But listen, you've got to make moves that last. I don't want you zigging and zagging. I don't want you hiring and 3 weeks later firing somebody. I've had buddies that happened in the past. They look like jokers. So listen to me. I want you to hire and keep if the person works with the team and it works out well. So I'm going to first make sure that I can hire that person. Let's imagine that we can. I'll pick me out a mid-set person. Now, how do we cast out and start looking for people? Well, one of your best resources are supply houses, inspectors, other electricians, other people in the industry first. Then if that doesn't produce anything, then you can start looking at Craigslist. You can also start looking at Indeed and all of the ones online, depending on how robust your area is on the internet and using things like Indeed. So you start casting the net out. You have them call a phone number. I always love to do a pre-talk, and in that pre-talk, I can answer a ton of questions. Everybody wants a resume. Listen, a lot of these old heads or these high performers, not all of them have resumes. I encourage you, don't let that be the barrier to entry to you getting your next rock star or somebody that's going to become your next rock star. Yes, I've got no problem if they want to send a resume, but honestly, you need to be able to ask the key questions in the first phone call, the interview, maybe the second interview that gets you to know what you want. I'm wanting to hire first people that I want to work with, For 2 that are qualified for the level that I'm wanting to work them on. For 3, I'm wanting to hire people that I feel like are going to listen. I don't care how much you know. I care when you know what you don't know. In electrical, I don't care how much you know. Everybody says, I'm a 10 at this, I'm a 10 at that, blah, blah, blah. I need to know that you're sober enough to know that when you get in front of somebody that you're going to pick up the phone and call me. You're out wiring in my name, and if you're out wiring in my name, I have to make sure that you have a sober understanding of what you actually know, and that you understand that nobody knows it all, and we all make phone calls to figure out what's going on, and you're not just going to go act on my behalf and act like some kind of cowboy. With that being said, that first initial phone call, I'm going to ask some key questions. I'm going to ask, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about your experience. Let them tell that. Then I'm going to ask key questions like, hey, maybe what year were you supposed to graduate? You can ask questions around trying to just gather as much information as possible. Then I'm going to, and I'm not telling you to ask or not ask any of these questions, work with your HR person, right? Which is probably you. But I'm going to ask key questions like that. I'm going to ask what they do in their free time. I'm going to ask them to tell me a little bit. And where are they working right now? If they're working for a friend, when I get off the phone, I can make a phone call and ask why so-and-so's calling. I may not always do that, but I might, right? Like, why is so-and-so calling me? Or I just got fired from so-and-so. Why did they get fired? Well, this guy doesn't come in and he came in drunk, blah, blah, blah. Quickly, that lets me know I can't waste any time. When you start getting 10, 15, 20 calls for employees, you don't have time to spend and invest on someone who just got caught drinking on the job or whatever, right? And it was a buddy's company of yours or just somebody that's local. If they just got fired recently, I want to find out why. With that being said, I'm asking just a few key questions. Let's imagine that they hit those questions good. I'm going to set up that first interview. In that first interview, I'm talking from body language to how they look at me, to how they answer the questions, to whether or not they look at the floor before they respond to me, the fluidity of it. I'll ask them a couple tough, not really obscure electrical questions, but depending on what level I'm wanting them to be at, I'll ask a question that's appropriate for that level, right? If it's a medium person, tell me about 4-way switches. Tell me about 3-way switches. And I won't push them too hard, and I don't let that necessarily be the deciding factor. First off, I have to want to work with you. I have to know that you're going to work with whoever I'm going to place you with well. I got to want to, big part of its personality. Also, I want to know that you know when you know what you don't know. And I want to hear about your history, your background, what you do in your free time, and what you value. If you don't have good values, you may or may not make it on the team based off of values, right? If you value money and only these things, and there's no thought of family in your life, and you don't have to have kids, but I mean, I want you to have good values. Don't hire people based off of what they think they can give you. Hire people based off of the ability to work with them work with you guys be good together. I can teach anybody anything. And a tech with a phone in his hand, there's nothing on the earth that we can't wire. Does that make sense? But if you are dishonest, if you have the wrong morals, if you have the wrong attitude, if you are job hopping and there's no good reason, because I can just call all the buddies and ask them all, then there's no point in you being on my team either, right? And then this industry may not be for you. If this is 6 time down and we're having the same consistencies and I can call 2 or 3 of the people of the 6, then there's a common denominator here. So during that first interview, I'm deciding if I think they can work on the team, if I think they're going to fit the spot. If so, I usually don't offer them a job right then, but sometimes I do, and I'll let them know that I'll call them by the end of the day. Then I'm going to get on the phone and make as many phone calls as I can, maybe check the references if they have some. It's good to have at least one good reference. Usually you can get someone that you can trust, and then give it a go. Have them come out. A lot of times, too, will do what's called a test day. Do a test day. So I'll call them back later that day and say, hey, I'm not going to offer you a job yet, but I'd love you to come do a tryout day. But this is after the first interview. If they don't hit everything in the first interview, or there's some clear signs that there is some trouble on the water, they don't get to do the tryout day. Then I have them do a tryout day. I pay them full day's wage no matter how long I have them out there, because I'm not having a guy come out for 2 hours. They come out all day. If I'm done working with them at noon, I'll send them off, pay them their day's wage. I have them come out and see just how they are on the job. What's their demeanor? Are they able to cut up a little? Are they able to work? Usually after about an hour or two of working around or riding with someone, who they are starts to come out, and then you can know kind of the real truth. Listen, you can hire however you want. I teach you ways that teach you how to hire and win. Not win sometimes, win every single time. Now, you can insert somebody that lies or somebody that deceived you. That's very rarely. But if you will follow the tried and true, slow process of hiring and firing and doing the things that I teach you here on this channel, you'll be better equipped to not only succeed, but succeed 9 times out of 10. I'm not in business to flip a coin and succeed half the time. I want to succeed almost every time. Now, if there's inputs that change the game, that's fine. I'll modify and adjust. But I want to set sail knowing that I'm going to hit the harbor. Now, if you've ever been in a boat, you know that when you're sailing in to wherever it is, there's these, depending on where you're at, there's these giant sections of beach and rock, but there's only one narrow spot to get that boat in there. And it might only be 50, 60 feet wide, right? And that captain has to know exactly where he's going. Did you know that for the majority of his journey, he can't see his destination, but he knows that he's heading on the right path. And when he gets there, that last little bit is dialing in his destination. Now, that is you running your business intentionally and hiring with thought and intention and a goal of where you're going. You may not see that outcome till the last little 10%, but you know that entire way because you've made a good plan you're going. Now, hiring willy-nilly, hiring randomly, hiring under stress, hiring because you think somebody can help you become something that you may not be or fill a need that you're not for the wrong reasons is like setting out on that boat with no captain. What are the odds, and you may move around and the waves are going to toss you and fro, but what are the odds 50 miles away that, or, let's say 20 miles away on the other side of that sea or whatever, that inlet, that you're going to randomly end up back safe at the harbor? You're not going to, right? So the whole point is, listen to me. I want you to lead with intention. I want you to lead with integrity. I want you to lead with intention of knowing where you're going. You don't see it all right now, but you're doing the stuff. You're looking at the compass. You're setting the sail. You're watching the winds. You're watching the currents, and you know that because you're doing the right stuff of taking your time, interviewing the person, setting up systems and processes that work, that you're going to end up at that result once you get to the last 10% of it when you actually decide to do the tryout day or to make the hire. Now let's get to know the coach. What is one of my favorite laws? Now, I don't mean laws like the law of the land. I don't mean that. I mean like the principle laws. So there's the law of reaping and sowing. That's a good one. That's a good principle. There's the law of diminishing intent. That's the one I want to share with you today. So the law of diminishing intent works like this. When you hear a good song or a good sermon or a good code class, or you hear a good coaching lesson, or you hear a good podcast, you are fired up about that. You want to do it. You're inspired. You've decided you're going to make the decision. You're going to hire the right way. What happens is, and what I caution you to do, is to act quickly based off of that emotion, based off of that momentum, based off of that inspiration. Now, we don't act emotionally, but that emotion's a heavy driver. It's huge in life. If you're inspired and fired up about something because of whatever external force, I want you to act quickly, because if not, the law of diminishing intent will always kick in, just like gravity. The law of diminishing intent works like this. I am fired up here, but the farther I get away from that point that impressed that motivation on me or momentum on me, the farther I get away from it, the more the desire fails. I intend to do well, but the farther I get away from that initial spark or that idea or that thing that fired me up, the less likely I am to act upon it. It's called the law of diminishing intent. So that is one of my favorite laws. So I encourage you today, if you're fired up, if you're inspired, if something I've said or somebody said to you has got you motivated, I want you to act on it now. Get that ball rolling. You can't count on other people to come around and motivate you, because what if they don't show up, right? I'm sick sometimes. I'm on the road. Other people are busy. Listen to me. You need to be self-motivating, and how you do that is you continually searching for and driving and setting proper goals to motivate you, counting your reasons to keep you motivated, and when you hear something inspiring, you act on it right away. Now, you might not be able to stop what you're doing while you're at work, but you can pull out your task list on Google like we talked about the other day. Get yourself Google Calendar, click on the task list. checklist, add this on there. I'm going to hire correctly and set up a hiring process. Boom. And then just make sure you're actively checking your task list. And that's how you stay motivated and inspired. Just remember, the farther you get away from the intention of buying the book, doing the thing, telling your wife you love her, whatever that looks like, the farther you get away, the more you're going to get caught up in life, and the law of a diminishing intent will kick in. Now let's give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video. It's StackMax. In my opinion, it's the ultimate solution in stacking, racking, and storing wire. You can pick two up. Pick up one for 12 gauge and one for 10. Stack them like that. Why don't you put your solids in the front and your strandeds in the back? And then obviously if you need to rotate it, you flip it around. You've got a whole rack of solids, a whole rack of strandeds. For 10 and 12, you'll be a wire pulling beast. Don't be a pony out on the job with cut rolls, cut reels. Get out there, get you some StackMax. If you head over to their website and use the coupon code COACH, you can save 10%. Let's get to it. Now let's take a look at the funny pick of the day. This one cracked me up. Is this a hackathon? I think this is called a hackathon. So somehow, some way, the plumber roughed in his stub and a hole got drilled after the fact. Now, it doesn't look like the wires below, but it does, or the wires just beneath it are going through it. They look like maybe they're going through the crack just next to where the pipe is. But that looks like two pieces of NM cable stubbed directly through that pipe. Now, friends, I was born, but I wasn't born yesterday. I don't know how this could happen without somebody doing it intentionally, but let's give the person a break for just a second. If we can. It's at a pretty steep angle. Let's imagine they're upstairs and there's a stud wall right there. Usually plumbing, oftentimes like a 2-inch like this, is in a stud wall. Let's imagine this is the washer box drain. Now, I don't know what size normally the washer box drain is. You can put it down in the comments below if you know. 1.5, 2-inch, whatever. Let's imagine they're drilling at an extreme angle for some reason upstairs, and they drill down through. Now, a couple of red flags that you've hit something. Usually you can feel it, hear it, feel that pipe vibrating. When you pull your drill back out, there's going to be some white substance on there called PVC. Then when you fish the wire down through and go down in the basement to complete the run, obviously you looked up and saw that there's a problem here. White dust on the floor. There's a lot of red flags here. And if you look over there at the wires down in the bottom left-hand corner, it looks like they are lacking in the skills and abilities potentially it takes to staple wire, run wire correctly. Maybe that's a crawl space. I'm trying to figure out exactly what the scenario is here. No, likely not going to be a crawl space. Who knows what it is? Long story short, thought this was a hilarious picture. Why don't you let me know what you think down in the comments below? Keep it clean, but why don't you drop a funny caption for this photo? All right, today we're doing 300.5. I want to grab a code book while we do this section. When we head over to 300.5, that is where we're going to find our burial depths. Burial depths. This is our code to remember today. We did 210.8 for our GFCI protection. We did 110.26 for our working space. Now we are in table 300.5. And this, my friends, is where you're going to find all your codes and regulations for how many inches deep to bury that wire, pipe, or cable, right? And remember, when you're dealing with these dimensions, it's to the top of the pipe. So if I need 18 inches and I've got a 2-inch pipe, I have to have at a minimum a 20-inch deep trench. Remember, 300.5. Now, there are some codes in section 300.5, but I want you to remember today, table 300.5. There's lots of goodies in here in between A and H. 300.5 for underground installations. There are a lot of goodies. This literally is probably a 1 minute to 2 minute read. If every day you remember a code and then you bust out the book or look it up online and read these codes, in just a few weeks of watching the Alpha Phase podcast, you will be an electrical beast. I don't want you to be a pony. I want you to be a beast, and how you do it is by remembering codes and reading and getting into the code. Every time I read something, I'm like, man, is that what that has said for all my career? Yes, it is. And I get something new all the time. So I encourage you, head over to 300.5, read the whole thing very quickly, do it on your break, invest in yourself, and watch how you become an electrical beast. Now let's head over to the history of the day. I just want to start doing a little history each day for electrical, and that's how we're going to start rounding out our episodes for the next season. The story of the electrical transformer begins late in the 19th century, during a time when scientists and engineers were racing to harness and distribute electricity over long distances. Around 1885, Hungarian engineers, these people with these names, were working for Works, a company in Budapest, and they developed the first efficient alternating current transformer system. Their design used closed iron cores and parallel connections, which made it possible to transmit electricity at high voltages and step it down safely for use in homes and businesses. This innovation changed everything. It meant that power no longer had to be generated close to where it was going to be used, like with DC. The idea soon was improved on by William Stanley and, of course, Nikola Tesla, both of them at the time were working for George Westinghouse. And I think it's going to go on to talk about Nikola Tesla here in a moment. George Westinghouse, who built the first practical commercial transformer, so a year later, his design would easily step voltage up or down, and when combined with Nikola Tesla's alternating current system, so Nikola Tesla pioneered the polyphase three-phase, 120 degrees out of phase to give us those full three phases so we don't waste any of the turn. We get it at 60 hertz. We take that, then you insert the high voltage transformer, which, if I'm not mistaken, Westinghouse actually purchased the patent from those original inventors and then made it practical so you could actually use it, the transformers that we know today. And when combined with Nikola Tesla's alternating current system, it paved the way for modern power grids. The transformer made it possible to send electricity across cities, mountains, and eventually entire nations, revolutionizing the way people lived and worked. Over time, the transformer became smaller, safer, and more efficient, evolving from oil-filled steel giants to compact and specialized units used in everything from phone chargers to industrial substations. Today, and every time you plug in your phone, flip on a light, or charge an electric vehicle, you're using the same principle of those early inventors discovered, that with the right winding of copper and iron, power can be transformed, controlled, and delivered anywhere on Earth. I am the Electrical Code Coach, and my bargain is that these videos will add value to you, and you will in turn add value to others. If there's anything you need from me, you can email me at electricalcodecoach@gmail.com. This is the Alpha Phase Podcast, but there is one who is the alpha of alphas, and he's the one that gives me the grit, the determination, the strength, the ability, and the grind to do everything that he's calling me to do. Even when I'm sick, even when I don't want to do it, he's the one that does it. His name is Jesus, and he'll do the same for you. If you need anything from me, you can email me at electricalcodecoach@